Going to the US courts now as well, and this is at state level in Montana. This is an interesting and worrying development at state level, which mirrors something that we've had here in the Netherlands at national level, where the Supreme Court, Hoge Raad, ruled in a famous ruling last year called Urgenda, actually more like 4 years ago now, sorry, that an NGO with that name, URGENDA, was allowed to tell the Dutch government to revise its CO2 emissions targets in the name of the future and the environment, because the Dutch government had signed up to the diplomatic instrument called the Paris Accords. You might think this would never go anywhere federally in the US, whether it's Trump or a Biden administration, and you will be right. But at state level, the Montana court, despite being very a conservative state, has enshrined in its constitution, because you have a lot of nature lovers in the northwestern US, that people have a right to a clean environment. And so these youth activists in the case, and the link to the full ruling will be in the show notes as well, have managed to get a state judge to interpret state law as meaning that when the government at state level says we're going to set our environmental targets and tweak the existing act, it's they get a judicial slap on the wrist for not considering future generations' right to a clean environment. So that stuff, that guff, is coming to America as well at state level, and it's Ricky Held versus the state of Montana is the case. If we just hop over the most peaceful border in the world and the longest, the US-Canada border, to the bordering Canadian province of Alberta, you'll find that the Federalist has got quite a scoop here that Justice Barbara Romaine, again, she's interpreting Alberta provincial law. She's not telling Ottawa what to do with its law. She has said that all those people, particularly in the province of Alberta, where the churches and the businesses were more defiant than in other places in Canada, they have had a conviction which is probably invalid now, because the Chief Minister of Health for the province of Alberta unlawfully delegated her decisions to the cabinet, which she wasn't allowed to do. Lest people get very enthused and think, oh, what a wonderful ruling, the preamble to the ruling states in unambiguous terms that it would have been perfectly fine to give people a denial of their constitutional freedoms. In Canada, that takes the form of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in the 1980s, if it had been done through the proper route, because of that famous get-out clause that the EU likes as well, and British human rights law also has, namely, it's proportionate and necessary in a democratic and free society. And paragraph 53 of the ruling, you can follow the link on page 18, has the judge in the case saying, I agree with previous case law that it's not reasonable or in accordance with the principles of statutory interpretation to allow the Chief Officer of Health for Alberta to make orders delegated from the cabinet because they're the ultimate decision makers. And right at the end, section 520 says the same in the summing up. That falls woefully short of saying something unlawful or immoral or illegal was done. It just says you didn't follow proper procedure, but it may be enough for Pastor Artur Pawlowski and a group of other lesser known people to have their convictions and fines quashed, even if it takes several rounds of appeal to do that. Just putting on screen for a couple of seconds the King's Bench ruling there, because of course the Commonwealth realms all have a King's Bench, which is supposed to allow direct access to the top ranks of justice for people who've been denied elsewhere. And I think that takes us on to Debbie, but I think you'll want to go back to you, Brian, in case you have any comments on what I've taken you through.
Well, all of it important, of course, and I just wanted to say on the Northern Ireland breach, as the public are told, things become electronic, it's stored on databases, more and more passwords keep your data safe. The reality always seems to be the opposite with these massive data breaches. And of course, the key point you made there was the public at risk. But we do seem to have some chinks in the armour.